We have not only these four gentlemen to answer your questions. Tim is here from Wesgro. We have Cape Town Tourism here. We've got the members, obviously, of the Joint Association of Members, JAMMS, to answer those questions as well. If we can, please, in an orderly fashion, line up behind the microphones to ask your questions. I'm going to ask you once again to be succinct, be very concise and to the point. Do not preambulate with dissertations or theses, and let's just try and get through as many of the questions as is possible.
My name is Margie Biggs from Specialised Tours and Events. My question to the city is, I understand that should we arrive at day zero, the CBD will not be switched off. Where can we find the information as to what the borders are of the area that will be switched off and that which would not be switched off?
All right, good question. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be real quick. This question is directly to Peter Flower, and we in Cape Town, we have a unique topography, and basically our mountains are not just beautiful, on the inside. It's not what's inside, it's what's on top. And by following the natural path of least resistance, we can tap into those waterfalls that you see right there on our mountains. And we can use artistic, non-invasive, cloud-catching structures to actually get the water vapor out of there and harvest millions of liters of fresh water every single day. At the same time, we can approach it from an artistic and tourism perspective to solve the problem. This will have an immediate and direct solution effect on the water crisis. It is also a valuable attraction for tourists, and all the jobs that are lost in agriculture can be transferred to this function.
A reminder, if you can just keep the questions concise, please.
I just want to know, what are your views on this environmentally friendly solution and the benefits thereof?
Which is using the tablecloth as a way of augmenting water?
All of our mountains, yes.
Fantastic, thank you. Ma'am?
Hi, it's Shona from Fair Trade Tourism. I want to know if you have any idea about how long the water restrictions will last for, especially the level 6B water restrictions, and if they're still going to be in place in summer.
All right, let's tackle those three. You please stay, don't move, and we'll come to your questions shortly. I'm not sure who from the city wants to tackle the borders of the city that will not be affected by day zero. There's a microphone in front of you, gentlemen. Are these microphones on the table? Yeah.
All right, I understand there was a question as to who I am. All right, sorry, I didn't introduce myself. It's Peter Flower, but I'm the Director of Water and Sanitation for the City of Cape Town. That was why I was offering my job. The first question about the borders of the CBD, the intention is to try and keep not just this CBD alive, but all commercial centres, CBDs. The precise boundaries thereof, we will make that information known in due course when we start to give out more detailed information around the pods, etc. So we will put that out.
Will that be next week? Because Ian did say that as early as next week we might be seeing listing of where those 200 water points are going to be.
Yeah, look, I mean, as we're moving now, obviously we're refining the plans on all of these initiatives. But we will obviously share whatever information in detail we can as soon as we can.
All right.
With regard to the cloud harvesting, it is something that we've looked at. We haven't taken it on board as an immediate project right now, but it certainly is something that has been looked at, and we do know that it can have merit. But we'd be happy to engage further on that one. But right now it's not part of one of the current augmentation options that we are initiating. How long will the restrictions last? Well, that depends very much on how much rain we get through winter time and how the dams perform. And those restriction levels will be determined by the rules of the model that, or the rules of the Western Cape water supply system, and how the modelling is projecting the dams are going to perform going forward into the future. And the idea of restrictions is to protect against the dams getting down to critical levels. So if it's deemed necessary to retain certain levels of restrictions for longer, then that's what will be done. And that'll be determined by the National Department who manage that system, and obviously the city then puts them into place within the municipal area. But it really depends on the performance of the dams, which is naturally influenced by how much water comes out and how much goes in. We can control how much goes out, as we've seen, but how much goes in is dependent on the heavens, and that we can't say. So I can't give you a prediction how long, but I can probably tell you that we will not remove all the restriction levels for quite some time, because we need to get the dams to recover back to a comfortable position where we avoid a possibility of something similar to what we're experiencing now happening again.
And will it be just the rainfall that determines how much easing, if any, of water restrictions, or will the kicking in of the augmentation programs, for example, allow us to start reducing those water restrictions?
Yeah, no, thank you. As I was putting the mic down, I realized I'd forgotten that part. But yeah, quite correct, because as I showed you on that graph, we're ramping up all these various augmentation schemes, and that will continue through for some time. So the effect of building up the additional supply of, let's call it, new water, will mean that we draw less from the dams and give the dams a bigger chance of recovering more quickly. So it all works together to achieve effectively the same result, which is to get a more resilient and safer water supply system in place to take us forward.
All right. Before I take the next round of questions, Lance Grayling from the City of Cape Town, do you mind just going to the microphone at front there? You may have some details around the announcement date.
Yeah, thank you, Africa, and I'm probably going to regret volunteering myself here. So just to introduce myself, I'm Lance Grayling, Director of Enterprise and Investment at the City of Cape Town, but I've actually just come back from the Disaster Risk Management Centre, which is based in Goodwood. And what we have done is we've set up various work streams to deal with the Day Zero planning. There has a lot of planning that's already gone into it, but there are various work streams to deal with some of the complexities and to dig deeper into that. And the reason why I said that I would just chime in here is that around the kind of areas that are going to be left in and what's going to be left out. And I know that a lot of people want to know answers to that question. Unfortunately, it is quite a complex exercise, and it's also an exercise that's probably going to be very contested as well. We imagine that people will probably also legally try and challenge the decisions that we make around this. So we have to take our time about this and make sure that we get it right, and that we have defensible criteria around determining what stays in and what stays out come Day Zero. So we are busy with that process. We are consulting with Senior Legal Counsel on Monday, and then we are having a planning meeting on Tuesday. I'm hoping that within the next 10 days, we'll be able to put out a plan that stipulates what is going to stay in and what's going to be out. And then there'll probably be some kind of an appeal process so people can put their case forward, but it will probably be truncated. So that's just to give you some clarity on how we're dealing with the issue of which areas will stay in and which areas will stay out.
Lance, is there an opportunity for businesses, for residents, I suppose, of the various areas to say this is what we think should be included within that border for the various CBDs?
Well, I think that the way we're going to deal with this is that we don't necessarily want to take individual motivations from businesses. I know some people have approached us about critical infrastructure, and certainly those we have to keep on, and there's various criteria we look at that in terms of critical infrastructure. But when it comes to businesses, we have to have a defensible criteria that doesn't speak to individual businesses, but looks at particular areas. It's also what the reticulation network is able to allow as well, so we have to overlay that too. So I think that the process that we will be following, and we are going to take advice from Senior Legal Counsel, is we'll do that exercise ourselves first, put it out there, and then there will be some kind of an appeal mechanism so people can put their cases at that stage so that we can do it. But ultimately, we are hoping to avoid Day Zero. That is the plan. We don't want to implement this because we know that people's livelihoods are literally on the line here. So we are making sure that we can run a defensible process in how we approach this issue.
Right. Thank you very much, Lance. Gentleman in the back, yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. My name is Warren Conrad. I'm a planning consultant. Just in terms of the defensible process that you're talking about at the moment, some of the some of the resilience projects that we are undertaking, that we're planning in order to meet, maybe not necessarily a Day Zero, but a point where we substantially have reduced water supply, have very, very long lead items in order to buy the equipment. So we don't have the luxury of time for lots of these things, and I don't want to be negative about this.
Can I just be clear, though? Peter has made this point that the augmentation plans were never there for us to make sure that day zero doesn't exist.
No,
Do you know what I
I'm
mean?
talking about our augmentation plans as
okay.
businesses.
All right.
Because we have to make our own plans to ensure our survival. We can't always depend on the
Okay.
authority.
Fair enough.
And so, I mean, I spent the morning doing that with one of my clients. Right? The question I want to ask has actually not got too much to do with that. It's more about the 25 litres per person per day. Has the city run simulations in different social environments to ensure that people can actually survive on the 25 litres and how they do that? It seems to me like the way it's split up at the moment is someone on an Excel spreadsheet said you can do 3 litres of water for your dogs, 9 litres of water to either wash yourself or wash your jeans and your sweater. You know, there doesn't seem to be any real input into that. I mean, we know the people in the townships have done it, so all we need to do is actually go and ask them how they survive and put together some sort of a survival guide for us. And that's what I'm asking at this particular point, because I don't know how my family's going to do that.
Fair enough. People in Kailicha, in Fuleni, in Begweni, all those places certainly live on less than 25 litres a day. Thank you for your question.
My name's Andrew Pollock, and my wife has a guest house in the southern suburbs, Constantia. And we are doing cloud harvesting at the moment. It comes from the Table Mountain Aquifer. And I think in the Constantia area there probably are 3,500 properties, and there are probably 3,000 boreholes. So where's that water coming from? That wonderful photograph just now up there with the Cape Doctor coming over, that's our supply of water right through summer. It rains on top of that mountain all the time, 4 days last week. But my question to the committee here is, to the city is this. We converted the entire guest house to borehole water. Having done that, I then used water-saving devices in every single outlet, toilet cistern, shower, and tap, and immediately saved 60 to 70% of the water consumed from the borehole. Why is it not law that every single tap in the entire city of Cape Town has to have a clever widget on it? That is my question.
All right. Thank you very much. Susan?
Good afternoon, Africa. Is it on?
Yes, it is.
I'm Susan Fausner from Greenwest Manor in Claremont, and we are in a residential area, and we are anticipating to get cut off. Of course, the CBD has to be kept running, all fine, but then I really urge the people at the CBD, and I'm flabbergasted when I come into this room next door, and there are about 30 tables with long, big, white tablecloths. 1 kg of washing costs between 20 and 25 liters of potable water. And if I hear things, Alan, Minister, that the Cape Cycle Tour manages with 50 liters, are they bringing their own towels? Are they bringing their own bed linen? Are they not using anything in the hotels? It is not possible. 1 room in one of the big hotels in the city, that is a minimum of 250 liters of water. The new CEO of Sisha, I would urge you to address overseas. Please, we are open for business. We will not be able to provide the same service because it wouldn't be responsible to change the linen every day as we used to do. And I still hear that we have here hotels in the CBD which will be running. Yeah, they're still doing it every day.
All right. I think we get thank you very much. All righty. We're just going to take those 3 questions, then come back to some more of your questions. The first one was around whether or not the city had done any studies around living on 25 liters of water.
Right. The city hasn't done studies on it. Many studies have been done worldwide. And in fact, the World Health Authority has indicated that 25 liters per person per day is a sustainable level In fact, in climates far drier than this, which are more aggressive, let's say, in terms of one's survival, they've maintained that 25 litres per person per day is a fair quantity. I do believe that it can be done. It doesn't mean that one can have a luxurious life, but we have to realize that these are going to be extreme times, and we have to take measures that you wet a cloth, and that's how you wash yourself for the day, etc. So there are ways and means to survive on that sort of thing. There are many people that are surviving on 25 litres per person per day as we speak here now. So we have to think carefully now about it. It will be uncomfortable, but it'll be uncomfortable for all of us. However, we would survive. But I think that's what you must think of, how uncomfortable that is going to be, to ensure that we avoid that. Because isn't it better to keep, by driving our demand down now, to keep the water in the pipes so we can supply it still to you, to your house, at a lower supply rate than is currently happening, rather than keep on using it at a high rate, and then we have to revert to fetching 25 litres per person per day afterwards. But 25 litres per person per day is a commonly accepted level given international and World Health Organization benchmarks.
In fact, I will commit to this. I'll ask our guys from EWN, and if there's anyone else in the media here, I'd advise you to do the same thing. We often make the mistake of saying it's the domestic in our house, it's our gardener in our house who lives like this. There's a bank teller who lives and has to exist with less than 25 litres of water. So we'll identify a number of young professionals who are already living under day zero circumstances, quite frankly, follow them around and put together a little video that can then give advice on how to live on those 25 litres a cap. Then there was a question of clever widgets. Why is it not law? I don't know if you want to hand that over to the politicians, or do you or are you happy to take this one on as well, Peter?
Yeah, I'm quite happy. Well, I'll take it. Look, we are trying to get the new water bylaws approved, and in fact built into that so that we can align the bylaws with the current situation are things that deal with household devices. So that is a very good point. Toilets, that's the types of toilets that should be utilized. Not having these large systems that when you flush it, you end up with about 12 liters of water running away. So there are many of these components built into those bylaws that are going to then regulate how people need to put equipment into their houses. Now, it's very difficult to put a law in place to force to be retrospective, but it actually is contemplated in there as well. The problem is, I don't know if it has closed now, but unfortunately so many people fall foul of fake news and what goes around on the social media. So some bright spark decided to put out a thing to get everybody to rule it or to comment against the bylaws, and within no time at all there was an app put together to be able to submit it, and people, I'm sure, not even having read the bylaw, put in a comment to put it down. Now those bylaws are being put in place to protect all of us, to protect us from water quality problems, so that if you are putting alternative water supply systems in your house, that you make sure that it is fully separated from the potable supply system, so as to protect yourself within your own house, but to protect your neighbors as well. Because if there's a burst pipe and the system goes and empties, there's a chance of sucking that non-potable water out of your household into the reticulation system, and when the system comes back on again, it pushes it into your neighbor's house. So there are reasons why we put these things into the bylaws, but people have unfortunately devious minds and think that the city is just trying to control them. So please be sensitive to the fact that these bylaws are put in place to protect all of us. So the bylaws will address that issue that came up there.
And then can I give the one on tablecloths and towels and stuff like that to Cesar, to just find out what, I suppose, in your industry you are communicating to try and get rid of these?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think just to clarify, when we speak about the new norm, it actually means that we can never default to where we are. We're redefining how things are going to be done. If you look at the astute traveler nowadays, they want to know that the tourism dollars, tourism euros, actually have a positive impact on the environment. Responsible tourism is the name of the game. In fact, the UNWTO's theme is about travel, enjoy, respect. Respect means respecting the environment, respecting the cultures, respecting everything else. So when we speak about the world is actually watching what we are doing, they're not watching how quickly we default back to where we're at. They're watching as to how we set the new benchmark as to how travel is going to be. The water crisis issue, again, is not just a temporary blip that will be readjusted. It is something that we have to live with going forward as well. So I beg to differ to say, tell people we can't give them the same level of service, tell people that we can't welcome them. I said the opposite. We will welcome you, however, here are the rules of engagement that are actually setting the pace going forward, not just that.
All right. Alan, you look like you want to say something.
I do want to say something because there was a statement made around the event where they said they've worked it out at 50 litres per head, which is what we all have to do is use 50 litres per head per day, and they use that number. And then there was a statement, but every hotel room uses around 5 times more than that. And I mean, I don't know what that real number is, and I know when you're running a big hotel, it is not easy to probably keep to 50 litres per head, but we are trying to establish a new norm where we have almost a measurement of what do we use as a norm in the tourism industry, litres per bed night. And we should be striving to actually become world best practice in that. Let's use this crisis to do it. But I mean, that's a point that I want to put back to JAMMS, to say, as the industry, I don't know what that norm is. The statement was that the cycle tours work it out on 250 litres per person or per head. Is that a credible number? And I mean, we need to go back into that negotiation and talk to other events. But what is the number? Because that's 5 times more than what we're being told to do as citizens.
Yeah. All right. Good, sir.
It's Albert Buerta. We own a guest house in Somerset West. Now, like most of the guest houses and self-catering units, we rely on international tourists this time of the year. We are in a residential area, so we do not have the advantage of being in the center of Cape Town and may not be cut off. When day zero starts, we cannot accommodate guests. We have to close. No doubt, you have no choice. We've been networking with a lot of the guest houses in Somerset West, Strand and Gordons Bay. All have the same problem. It's our livelihood, so for the next 4 or 5 months, no income. You have to retrench people or put them on a very, very basic salary. What is being offered to people like ourselves who cannot survive?
Offered in what sense? Are we talking litres of water? Are we talking about financial compensation?
Assistance in any way. Our water bill will go up this month, if we compare it to last month, by 450%, up to 23,000 Rand. We as guest owners or guest house owners cannot afford that. Is there any recourse for us?
Financial support, you mean? Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Ryan from Cape Canopy Tour and Elgin Valley Tourism. We're in the very fortunate situation that Elgin Valley does have water, but this still does affect us. I think we're the closest town to Cape Town with water, but there are surrounding towns that do have water. My question is, how can towns like Elgin Valley support the city, and sort of what is the strategy, and how can the city utilize towns like Elgin Valley to support tourism? Obviously, we can't give you the water, it's on a different system, but how can we then support you, and how could you utilize towns such as ourselves?
Good question. Thank you very much. Ma'am?
Hello, I'm Jane Edge from Fairtrade Tourism. I'd like to once again ask specifically what the integrated message to the tourism sector is. I know Cesar spoke about new rules of engagement. I just wonder if you could unpack that a bit for us, because in my view, the notion of Zero Water Day is completely contradictory to the notion that we are open to business, and certainly that we are open to business as usual. We all know that there have been cancellations. The American market is very skittish, avoiding Cape Town at the moment. And to be honest, I haven't really read out of the tourism community what we should be saying internationally. And I think it's going to be very hard to stage an international PR campaign that's talking with a lot of credibility about, well, come and visit us, it's business as usual, when the clock is ticking on people's TV screens showing Zero Water Day, and the local residents a lot of local residents are completely focused on that deadline.
Right, thank you very much.
Sorry, can I add one last thing, which is not really a question, but just to say that as Fair Trade Tourism, we have been measuring the per bed night consumption of water amongst our clients. A biggish hotel, for instance, seems to be using at the moment, despite water saving measures, about 100 litres per bed night. So if you wanted to get those figures from us or to liaise with us, it would be fine.
All right, thank you. First question is around what help, if any, is available for guest houses that will have no choice but to close down because they are located in residential areas when there is day zero. And in addition to that, I suppose, as of next month, there'll be a massive hike in their tariffs for water. I'm not sure who wants to take that answer. Ian is reaching for the...
Well, certainly, we fully understand exactly what you're saying. I mean, this is clearly the thing that we want to avoid. So, but it is going to be very difficult for us in terms of the way that the networks operate to be able to supply water to individual properties within a residential area, because we're not going to be able to do it on the basis of shutting off the supply to each property individually. We're going to have to shut off a whole network section. That's the only way it's going to work practically. So I think the key message right now is it's going to be necessary for owners to look at how they can supplement their supply. What is it they can do about getting for themselves an alternative water supply? And I know there are many that have done that. This issue obviously doesn't only affect guest houses, it affects all businesses that operate in residential areas. They all going to have this difficulty. So I think that's when Lance spoke earlier about us looking for criteria, it was exactly for us to try and look at that particular issue. But it just comes back to the key issue. We must do everything to avoid day zero. That's got to be our top priority, because the more we do on that, the less chance we have of affecting any kind of businesses wherever they might be. So, instead of it perhaps being 3 months, we can get it down to 1 month, or we can get it down to 2 weeks, or we could get it down to 0. These are all the possibilities that are there, depending on what effort we put into to saving water now, so that we do not get to day zero. As far as the tariffs are concerned, I think the message is simply that we're all going to have to adapt to higher tariffs. This is an economic signal that we put out. It's going to apply to everyone, because we can no longer go with a situation of subsidized water. It is simply not sustainable for us to do so. We have to now all understand that water is going to be more expensive into the future, whatever we say, whoever's in government. This is essentially, it's simply an economic issue, and adaptation is critical.
Sorry, Africa, would you mind if I answered that question from a private point of view? And I want to repeat what the question is.
Yeah.
A man's going to close down his business because he's got no water. This, amongst others, is a FedHasa meeting where we are members. And we, as a membership, and also we are members of the greater Cape Town community, must take on sharing responsibility. For those who have borehole water, we supply to those who have not borehole water. If that gentleman is prepared to come through to me with a 1,000-litre container, he can take my water for free. And the City of Cape Town can do nothing about it. It is my gift to him. And what I want to say further to this, there are many elderly people, frail people, people who cannot do 25 kilograms in one hand. I'm choosing 5 families that I know, and I will deliver to them free 1,000 litres of water a week. I suggest that everybody who has a borehole in the city adopts something similar. If that gentleman from Somerset West needs water, the man over the hill in Elgin will be able to supply it.
As long as you remember that there will be systems that will need to be followed, because the city will need to know who are the other 5 people you're collecting for.
Let me just stop and ask me who I am.
No, good sir. Your intention is well appreciated. What I'm saying... What I'm saying is that the solutions you're presenting have complexities to them. They're not as simple as that. And the city will come up with a solution, don't get me wrong, to make it possible for you to collect for 5 elderly people in your community. Just follow the procedure so that we're all above board in trying to, I suppose, deal with day 0 should we ever get to it. Peter, Ian, on the issue of boreholes and being able to
let's talk about the proposals, the day 0 proposals for the collection points that we call pods. So the proposal is that the supply is 25 litres per person per day. But in practice, we know that we have 4 million people in the city. We cannot have a heavy level of regulation. It's simply not going to work. We have to ensure everybody has access to water. So our proposal of the operation of these pods is that we will allow any individual to collect 100 litres at a time. So that's 4 times the 25. So one person in a family can come and fetch for the whole family. And once you've taken it, you can go to the back of the queue. We're not going to stop you. We're simply trying to ensure that there is no abuse and that everyone gets a fair chance. So you can collect for your whole family, you can collect for your neighbors, but we are also critically aware of the issue of those vulnerable people, as has been mentioned here, the elderly, the bedridden. There's many others that we have to think of. So we are looking to see how we can address that individually. We are proposing to go into a process of getting people to register that would need that kind of assistance. Getting service organizations, NGOs, others to volunteer to assist in delivery. We are also looking to have our water tankers or to take on many more water tankers so that we can also then deliver to such people. So I think there's going to be a major effort. It's only going to work if everyone assists. We all have to work together to make this work. But I really come back that avoiding it is still going to be the best. As far as boreholes are concerned, the city doesn't have authority over boreholes. It's a national government competency. But to the extent that people do have boreholes, we would certainly encourage that they also then seek to assist their neighbors and their friends and others to ensure that everyone does get as much water as possible. Thank you.
All right. Okay, do you want to applaud? You can go ahead.
Not yet.
Thank you. Elgin Valley was offering support and wants to know how they can support the City of Cape Town.
Okay, so the whole reason that we're here is because of risk. The whole reason Day Zero is there, it's risk management, putting plans in place. And I want to suggest, or I trust, that all of you as businesses are here because you're trying to understand the risk. You need to put business continuity plans in place. We've got some templates if anybody wants that. But you need to understand that if and I sincerely hope it's the totally unlikely event that you have to go to Day Zero, is the chance that your business is going to close. What are you going to do about it? And that's when the Elgin stuff can start to come in. So when we had the fires in Knysna and guest houses didn't exist the day after the fire, and they had clients arriving, tourism started to work together. And people were passing clients on to other businesses. And I think in your business continuity plans, you need to say, if this happens, am I able to make a plan? Do I have a borehole? Can I have I positioned some water tanks in place, etc., etc.? If you've got none of those, what is your business continuity plan? Because you cannot risk your business brand by just saying, sorry, we can't accommodate you, and turn the person away. You need to be able to pass them on. And so that needs to be part of that plan, and I'm sure that JAMMS also would be quite keen on being involved in that, and from the province's side as well, we have got some templates because we talk to all of business on that business continuity plan, and I think everyone needs to be doing that.
All right. And then the integrated message that is being taken out to the market.
So it almost seems like a paradox, doesn't it, to say we're in the middle of a drought, at the same time we're still promoting people to come through. So let's just role play this for a second, right? So if we go out there and do nothing or say to people don't come through, what are we actually putting in place? A, we're putting 300 jobs at risk. We're putting a GDP contribution to this province of at least 40 billion, right? There's no easy decisions, by the way. But at what cost? At any given point in time within Cape Town, there's not more than 1% of international tourists in Cape Town, right? So that 1% packs a mean punch. They actually keep you guys going in the room. And if we lose that 1%, what do? Right? What impact does that have on the water? Even if you include domestic tourism, that takes it to 2.5%. Right? So there are no easy choices here, but all I'm just trying to say is that the key issue, let's focus on that 98% and get that right, that actually works us to work through this problem, as opposed to take a short-term view that is going to cost us 10 years to get back again. Because once you're off the circuit, ladies and gentlemen, you will have very difficulty to come back again. The second part is that when we tell tourists not to come to Cape Town, they don't cancel Cape Town, they cancel South Africa. They cancel KZN, they cancel Limpopo, they cancel Mpumalanga, everywhere else. Then you exacerbate the problem right across the board. So those are the things that are simply there. We have tough choices to make, but it all lies within in terms of how do we get our consumption, how do we get our behavior right, etc. As far as a common messaging, that is important. And that's the site that we want to put up with Wesgro. And literally, we're working under pressure to make sure that we can have a common script that everyone sings from the same hymn sheet. Make your own words out of it, whatever it is, but that common space. And remember, this is an evolving story. So every hour, there's something new coming through on that side. And we promise to have that out as soon as possible so that, again, you can just pull from the central information and make a view out of it. Thank you.
Can I push a little bit on the date? Guys, if you're going to applaud, applaud. Like, do it properly with, like, chutzpah. Tim, Enver, any idea of how soon? Tim, you can just use the microphone there. I'll tell you why. Because obviously, the business here is already getting people cancelling their inquiries or perhaps wondering whether they should be coming or not. And whatever messaging they're putting out there has to be the same as the one you take into the international media, for example, to counter the kind of overwhelming sense of panic that is being put out there.
Okay, so I'm Tim from Wesgro. The answer, Africa, to how soon is 2 weeks ago. Okay, let me first say, Wesgro promotes the whole Cape economy, right? But I can tell you in every other sector, they are not nearly as coordinated and as responsive as the full team in tourism, right? So your chairs of your member bodies, Enver, Julie May at Cape Town Tourism, Jeff, Ilana, Jacques, they were incredibly quick out the blocks. 2 weeks ago, we put together, as a group, the JAMMS members and Wesgro and the city and the province, a single position in a 2-page frequently asked questions and statement that was available 2 weeks ago. This week, we upgraded it. It's version 2 now. It also includes a map of where the water restrictions are. And we'll do another update next week from all of us, city, province, and industry, that's available to you to answer any questions that you have for groups or individual travelers. It's a single message from the industry and from government that no one else has. The minister mentioned the war room. That is 12 individuals. It's actually up to 15 now. Cape Town Tourism has deployed someone. David Green at the V&A has put his comms director into that war room. If you have strong communications people, we welcome them to come and sit there too. What they're doing is pushing out those answers to any queries that we get from all around the world, media and tourism. But they're also working out which questions we're getting more of so we can add them to the frequently asked questions. So there has been a response very quickly from all of your member bodies and government for the tourism industry. What CISA brings, as you've heard him say, is the international clout, the spend of South African tourism, and the ability to communicate in all of our key markets. On the 12th of February, we're launching, firstly, that page that CISA talks about, but also a digital campaign. So anybody that searches for the destination immediately gets the message, Cape Town is open, but be mindful of our new reality. We can target that campaign. We can link it to big spend by SAT to get the message out. And I'm confident because of that responsiveness from government and business in your sector and all your member bodies, that we are going to be able to combat the negative effects of a day zero message. We've all heard now why we need to have a day zero message domestically. It makes sense. But what I can assure you is that everybody representing you and everybody worrying about tourism in government has a single message saying Cape Town is open, but be mindful.
All right, thank you very much, Tim. By show of hands, by the way, who has had communication regarding this common message? All right, so I'd say about 40% of the room. The chairs of the various members of JAMMS, quite a bit more work needs to be done in communicating what is already available. And Tim, if you can just WhatsApp me what the war room number is so that I can share it with people and they can put it down on their phones by the end of this meeting. I'm going to take 2 more rounds of sets of 3 questions. Let's start at the back.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Maria Silverschild. I'm an entrepreneur in water saving and energy saving. I have a question regarding actually the aftermath of this water crisis, and it's actually what I see is the increase of plastic bottles that people are piling up at home. And we are talking about millions of plastic bottles that will need to be recycled. And my question to the city is there a plan for this, to take care of all these plastic bottles that has come to this region?
All right, Ian, I'll give that to you to answer. Thank you for your question.
Hi, my name is Velma Corcoran. I'm the country manager for Airbnb. So CISA and Tim have in part answered my question, but I've been standing here for a while. So,
Which is what will happen should we get to day zero, by the way. There will be a lot of standing around, getting to know fellow South Africans while you're waiting for your 25 liters of water.
So, I mean, I think it's very clear we need to do everything we can to avoid day zero, and that the position, you know, of the city and the province and South African tourism is we're open for business, but it's business unusual, and be very mindful. And that's what we've been communicating. We're obviously thinking about business contingency, and to give you a sense of the scale, you know, we have more than 10,000 hosts in the city. To date, we've got over 20,000 people confirmed to be coming to Cape Town between April and July. And so kind of my question is, at what point does that position change? Do we get to a position in tourism which we're in a similar position to agriculture, where actually they're not getting water, where Cape Town is no longer open for tourism because of the impact that it has? The other thing just I wanted to add is that from an Airbnb point of view, we have a very powerful community. We have numbers in Cape Town and in terms of our guests that are confirmed, and we are very open to thinking very creatively about how we can use them to be part of the solution.
Great. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. Maybe we've got a creative solution. My name is Gary. I'm from Tsogosan, and we've done a couple of things in terms of water saving. But I think there's a creative solution, and we can maybe turn some of this into a positive situation. But we're definitely going to need the help of the Wesgros of the world, Cape Town Tourism, Honourable Minister. A couple of years ago, the buzzword was carbon neutral. And maybe there's a way we can look at creating tourism around being water neutral and somehow find a way to make that a reality. We've got a very big domestic conference coming in February. It's approximately 250 people for 4 nights in the next 3 weeks who wanted to cancel because they felt that morally it was incorrect to come to Cape Town and come and have their conference here. It's probably worth about 6 million rand for us. So what we did is we said, how do we make it water neutral? We then said we work on an average of about 70 litres per person per day in our hotel at the Cullinan, and we worked out what's going to be the consumption. We worked out what the average price is of water per litre trucked in from outside the city, outside of the city where the water shortages are, and we came up with that number. And in conjunction with that corporate, they are going to contribute off their room rate a percentage rand value for us to be able to buy water and donate it to a charity of choice or donate it to somewhere that really needs it. So what we're asking for is maybe we can have some sort of a platform or a structured setup, because if everybody willy-nilly goes out and just donates to charities, I think we need a coordinated effort. And I think it's a great way to keep the gates open for tourism coming into Cape Town, to work on the moral obligation of keeping it water neutral, and to finding a solution not just for 10,000 Airbnb hosts, but also for just B&B hosts and other hotels and conference facilities in general. Thank you.
And out of interest, who do you think should be coordinating that initiative? That should the city, for example, be saying, you know what, if you have somebody who wants to contribute to water neutrality and is willing to buy X amount of liters of water from outside of the province, should that be the city? Is it something that tourism industry should look
I think
after?
it could fall under province. I think it could quite easily fall under province and be coordinated through the Honourable Minister's office or through Wesgro. So I definitely think they can coordinate it. And we're happy to help. I just think if it's a coordinated effort, otherwise each person is going to do their own thing, and we have strength in numbers if we all work together versus going into own direction.
It's a lovely idea. Thank you. That deserves a round of applause. Okay, Ian, increase in plastic bottles. What do we do with all that recycling post, return to comfortable levels of water?
Well, certainly we have been giving thought to exactly that issue. In the city, our solid waste department does have a strong recycling initiative on this. I know also many of the bottling companies also driving recycling initiatives. We have had discussions with one of the biggest bottlers here in the city. They are making very sure that the kind of plastic that they are using for production, including when we are talking to them about producing a special drought 2-liter bottle at a very affordable price, the type of plastic used is something that is a recyclable plastic. So it's certainly a matter of concern, and all I can say is that we have initiatives in place to deal with it. If I can just then speak the Airbnb issue, certainly, again, it is we want to avoid getting to day zero. So I think those numbers from April to July, we are likely to see it be a much shorter period than that, at least. And so I think any effort we can have to reduce that result in impact on the tourism is going to help. And to Sogo-san, thank you. I think that's a very good idea around looking to have a water neutral approach to matters. The city, for example, is already requiring every event organizer, when they submit an event application to the city, it has to include a water plan. So it's not just these two big ones of the cycle tour and the Two Oceans Marathon. We're requiring every event to provide a plan to us. The bigger organizers are finding good solutions. Some of the smaller ones, the small events, are struggling to find ways to do that. And perhaps that's another place people in the private sector can reach out to support these smaller events to find ways to find solutions.
All right, I'm going to push a little bit on the Airbnb issue. I think what she wants to know is that those 10,000 hosts at some point will need to stop accepting applications for people to come and use their rooms. And what she's looking for, if I understood your question correctly, I don't, if I answer your question correctly, at which point then does Africa Melania, who owns an apartment in town, say to John Dobbs, don't come anymore because we don't have any? That's what you're looking for, right?
Well, I certainly understand what the need is there. Our difficulty, quite frankly, is that we cannot give you that at this moment in time. It's simply impossible. We cannot, we are projecting at the moment a date for day zero. We are looking to push that out to a later date, but I cannot give you such a date. I also don't know, none of us know when the rains are going to start, because the rains are going to determine when we get to the end point. So we're sitting with two very large unknowns, and we're hoping that period is going to be zero. So we just don't have the information to give to you to say, well, after a particular date, people should not be coming. All we can encourage is that we continue to operate as much as possible, that people continue to find ways to cope through those particular crisis points. That's the best that's available at this moment in time. As we progress over the next couple of months, we will obviously start getting better information.
All right, it's the best we can do for the moment. Enver, you'll need to use the microphone then. Thanks, Enver.
I think as a continued initiative from JAMMS, Cape Town Tourism, Fedasa, SACI and SATSA, we are going to be looking at what, if day zero happens and the areas that aren't in the CBD zone that's not cut off and so on, we're going to look at coordinating efforts to get our members together, and we're going to segment them into the different areas, and you have, let's call it water committees, and those water committees through JAMMS as a center and so on, we'll work out ways in which we can share the burden of getting water from one another and trying to find innovative and creative ways within which to get water to keep our businesses open. The closing business day zero or not is not an option. If you close your business, you're dead, and you might as well go try something else. So I think we need to operate from the premise that our business is not going to close. And as I said in my welcome, we're going to work together. This is the time to coordinate and work together and come together for the benefit of all. So as the gentleman said, we'll share water. He's prepared to give water to this one and that one. And it can become a bit chaotic, as you say, Africa. So through the JAMMS initiative, we are committing that we would coordinate this event, that we'll work together with our members, you all in the industry, and we'll try to work out something where we all benefit and we all can share with what we have and with others that don't have. So that's what we're doing going forward. But don't worry, the person in Constantia who has water in his tap will bring it to you. That's what I'm proposing. I'm proposing that we're going to work together as I'm always talk against silos, but we're going to work together as mini silos, and we're going to work in communities, and we're going to support one another, and we get water from the communities that do have, as a tourism community, as the various associations, as the practitioners. And that's what I'm proposing, and I think JAMMS will use that initiative and drive that initiative forward and coordinate the whole event. That's what I'm saying, sir.
Guys, can I just reiterate this point? That should we get to day zero, it will be our fault, right? Granted, government could have made decisions at certain times and they didn't, and they'll have to answer for that. There's nothing that can be done by any of these gentlemen who are sitting on the stage, and some of them sitting on the front row here, to stop us from getting to day zero. If everyone in our family, social circle of friends, colleagues, if we put them under pressure to use less than 50 liters of water a day, that is the only way we're going to beat day zero. And I don't mean to sort of be all... Oprah would say, let's take the power back, is the reality. And we need to realize for ourselves that we can beat day zero if you choose to. Only if we choose to. There's only so much that Peter, Ian, Alan, and Cesar, there's only so much that government can do. There's only so much that money can do. There's only so much that technology can do. Nearly 70% of the water being consumed is being consumed by us in our homes and our apartments. And if we don't do what is required of us to save ourselves from day zero, then, gentlemen in Somerset West, you will not have water to serve or to serve your guests, and you'll have to go to Constantia to get the borehole. Are we clear about that? I mean, if there's any one message that needs to come out of here, it's that, guys, that we are the only people who can stop ourselves from day zero. Or am I just being naive and being all romantic here?
Jeff Rosenberg from Fedhauser. I think we got to build on what Africa's been saying here. And I first, on behalf of JAMMS again, want to thank everybody for being here, because it shows that there really is a problem. But if everybody sitting in this room cannot put up their hands and say that you yourselves are saving at home what you are expecting others to do for you, then you shouldn't be here. Can everybody put their hands up that you're using at home what you're supposed to be and less? I see there's not hands. There's quite a few hands that are not up. And this is what we need to do, guys. It's very definitely what we can do as a community to be part of the solution. So let's actually ask the questions. We're all here to help. And as Enver says, from a JAMMS point of view, we're here to assist. But the whole thing starts with us individually ourselves.
Thank you very much. Let's take the last round of questions before we get the closing statements from our panelists. We have 2, 4, 6 questions, gentlemen. You'll be able to handle all 6 at the same time, right? Sir?
Good evening. My name is it mine?
Yeah. It's on, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Wendell Lamb. Much has been spoken and plans have been made for day zero. If it should come, water will be available. I would like to pose a question to the guy that does water and sanitation. Are there plans in place for sanitation? What is going to happen to toilets and our sewer system after day zero? Are there plans in place?
It's a good question. That's a question for Peter. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karima Nokia from Pisces Divers. My question is about boreholes and well points. How sustainable is it? Do we know how much water are under Cape Town in the aquifers?
Okay, thank you very much. Your question, sir?
Hi, my question is, we've been talking about saving water. For all of us have to save water. And for months now, we have been hearing about people that abuse water, that there are people below 40% that use the allowance that they are allocated to, and there are 60% that use much more than anybody else. What does the city do to bring those people into line that are actually abusing water consumption.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Brendan. I own Cape Villa Collection. We market and represent about 500 self-catering properties around Cape Town. A couple of points. Firstly, it's not a choice to close our business. Cash flow determines that for us. I'm about one Friday afternoon question away from closing my business. So my competitors here, you heard that from me first. And the reason being is because for business, day zero has already arrived. Day zero is actually a bit of a red herring because tourism is on sentiment, and sentiment external to our buyers. Our buyers can choose not to come at the drop of a hat because they can choose to go elsewhere. And that's already happening, and it's happening on a large scale. It only takes a 30% or 40% drop to a business to hit your profits and go into loss. So this is a financial crisis for the tourism sector. When there's an agricultural crisis, the government steps in and they provide all sorts of financial support to the agricultural sector. When there's a banking crisis, the government steps in and buys the banks and takes on the debt. And they solve the problem to keep people employed and to keep the sector running. This event has potential to change the face of tourism in Cape Town materially because businesses like mine give way to businesses like Airbnb who just put focus on Sydney for a while and then bring it back to Cape Town. And okay, I won't make my next comment about Wesgro and Airbnb. So my question is, one of the options that we're taking is to say to our owners, we will not market your house unless you can guarantee water. Not from the city, but for your property. In order to do that, you need to drop a borehole. I can't encourage you to do that because there's a mixed message out there from the city and from social media, probably my fault to take it, from the radio, from everywhere, that boreholes need to be regulated. Boreholes will be regulated. I recall ZANU-PF knocking on my door in Harare asking for a license for a generator when they couldn't supply electricity. So we know this approach to regulation, and there needs to be a very clear message from the city that says, yes, we understand the environmental impacts of boreholes. I don't need an environmental lesson. I'm actually an environmentalist. What I need is a clear message to say, you are free to drop a borehole in your house, and until further notice, you can use it. And we will not penalize you for that. We will not meter that. We will not come after you for that, because we know we can't anyway. We can't stop people speeding, and they're going past us at 100 miles an hour. So put a clear message out. Will they put a clear message out?
Can I ask this? The city has been very clear about this. It has absolutely no jurisdiction whatsoever over boreholes and well points.
Yeah, they've been clear. It's the first time I've heard it. And so I'm talking about out there. So that because my owners are saying to me, I might put a borehole in, I might not, but I'm not going to tell you. Because that goes onto a database of people with boreholes, and there's a little bit of fear in the market. So clarity on that issue would be very welcome. I think that's fantastic if they don't have jurisdiction.
What I'll do then, because there was an earlier question around the sustainability of the amount of water we have through boreholes and well points.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to ask.
This is a temporary issue.
I'm going to ask Peter to answer that. Yeah. But maybe hand over your question to Alan and see what conversations can be had with National Department of Water and Sanitation, who
so it's financial support and regulatory support.
Who actually have jurisdiction over what needs to be done with the boreholes and stuff. Okay, thank you.
I think we all think the same thing. We're probably preaching to the converted in this room. So we need to get the message out, just to reiterate what the previous gentleman said. From Simonstown, we are a small community, but we have quite a number of guest houses in residential areas. We are very concerned about this meter thingy you're talking about. How are you going to regulate that? Are you going to look at the sign on the house before you switch off the water? I know we all have to save water, and we really are trying very hard. But we don't quite understand how this water reducing system is going to work, because we are residential. Many of us we don't have much say into what happens in the bathroom. even though we can take out the plug, etc.
All right. Are you talking about the water management devices that the city is installing throughout the city of Cape Town if you consume more than the
Yes.
allowed amount? Okay.
Because we obviously do consume more than a residential property.
All right. Peter will answer that. And then the last question from the floor today.
Last question. First of all, thank you. What I've heard today is that you will improve the crisis communication on this issue of water, because that is vitally important for the tourist industry, especially the tour operators out there. Okay, but that now to my question is also relating to borehole and borehole supplied water. Am I allowed, I'm working on a contingency plan for my guest house. Would it be possible to address our neighbor that has a borehole, that he will then supply the water for me, that I can at least keep my guest house running if a day zero occurs? Or am I still able to buy in water from external suppliers? Or will you, the City of Cape Town will prevent that from happening or prohibit this? Thank you.
Oh, wait, will the City of Cape Town prevent what from happening? You going to your neighbor and asking?
No, to prohibit external water suppliers from bringing in water for my guest house.
And those external suppliers will be what? You buying water
I
from
will buy water from some external supplier and provide that to my guest house. That would be my contingency plan. Or to get the water from our neighbor that has a borehole. So either or.
Okay, cool.
But my neighbor, for example, he says he's not allowed to give me any water because the city or whatever is not allowing to do that. And it's prohibited, that's prohibited, and that's why he's not able to give it to water to me.
It certainly adds to the miscommunication that has been shared around the issue of water. Ma'am, are you adding an additional question, even though I said that was the last one?
I understand. It's just a follow-up on the regulatory question. The amendment on the bylaw, there's a yellow piece that's the amendment that says, where water is being used with the required permission from groundwater sources and boreholes, etc., that you may not connect it to the mains. But that section being added in there, I think then implies that there is no such thing as a private person putting in a borehole without going through council and getting required approval. And I'm just wondering, if people are jumping in and trying private solutions, are we putting a huge amount of red tape in place here that criminalizes activity that basically otherwise would be, saving the situation for some people who are saying they might use them?
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you very much. Shall we deal with all the borehole and well points questions first? One, sustainability of the amount of water we have underground, effectively, and do we have any idea how much pressure we're putting into the system should we be drawing it at the way that we are? Are neighbors allowed to go to their neighbors to ask for water if they're out of water? And is the communication that they're not allowed to give neighbors water true or not? Because that's coming from the City of Cape Town. And those kind of things. And the red tape, obviously, that the lady was talking to with regards to the bylaws.
Okay, Africa. I didn't quite catch the last question, quite honestly. It was the sound is not great that I can hear here. It could do with a bit more treble on it. But,
ma'am, if you can go back to the microphone. But my understanding was there are certain sort of clauses within the bylaws that basically say that you can draw water from borehole if you've got the necessary permits from the city council, and she's wondering whether or not you're creating unnecessary red tape as far as the sharing of water is concerned. Did I hear that correctly?
You did. So as and I might be, I'm hoping I'm using the correct source. I'm looking at something that shows the amendments to the bylaws, and one of those amendments is in point 11, where it's added the words with the required permission around boreholes, well points, etc. Now, if that goes into a law, it means that you have to go and apply, which then becomes a bureaucratic process. When an entire city management is already having its hands full with dealing so many things, if you now need a license or a permit, that then means another whole section of regulation. Yeah.
all right. I think the first question was about sanitation, if I remember.
No. Can we deal with the boreholes
Oh,
first?
you want the boreholes first?
Let's do
Oh.
all the borehole and borehole related questions first
Okay.
and get those out of the way.
Well, it's actually related. But I'll start at the borehole end.
That is so tweetable. Imagine that. I'll start at the borehole end.
All right. There was a question about sustainability. So, with the boreholes that we're putting down into the Cape Flats aquifer, into the TMG, extensive studies have been done over a long period of time to look at what are the sustainable yields of these aquifers. And we obviously have to apply for special licensing through the National Department, because remember, groundwater is actually regulated and controlled by the National Department, not by the City of Cape Town. So we apply for what's called a WULA, a water use license application, and that application requires you to stay within the sustainable yield of that aquifer. You can do short-term over abstraction, but that requires then recharge to take place. So we're factoring all of these sorts of things in. But I think the question that you were asking was more related to the abstraction from boreholes in the residential areas.
Correct, yeah.
And there, of course, it's not as determined because the studies have not been done as extensively in the areas where it's residential. Hence, the restrictions that we've now put in place as from yesterday, where through the National Department allowing or now regulating through the last regulation that was promulgated or gazetted about a week ago, a little bit more I think, in terms of borehole regulations, the city can now use that in its restrictions measures to drive down. So what we try to do is we don't want to stop anybody using borehole water inside the house for non-potable purposes, and even for potable purposes if you've treated it suitably. But what we are trying to regulate and limit is the use of water outside of the house, in other words, for irrigation purposes in the garden, and thereby help to sustain those aquifers that are in most cases, when people are using well points and it's close to surface aquifers or perched aquifers, those can start, and I'm sure in some areas they've already started to run dry. So in order to stop the abuse of that water in this extremely difficult time that we're going through, we just felt we should either outlaw it completely or limit it significantly, which is the latter that has been put in place. So the regulation for the restriction as from yesterday was you're entitled to do irrigation of gardening for 2 days of the week, a Tuesday and a Saturday, and 1 hour each on each of those 2 days. And I think that is also fair to those folks that have put in systems, put money into it in order to try and do that. But we just think it's unreasonable, and we see it when we drive around, people having irrigation systems going all day, well, not all day, but every day, when other people are really battling. So it's unfair. But the real impact would be that you'd start draining those aquifers or continue draining them at a rate that then would preclude other people from using it for more important purposes, and that would be like flushing toilets and all the other non-potable purposes that one could. So I hope that helps. We don't know at every point in the residential areas what the likely sustainable yields are. It's a study that, it's not really our space to do, but studies have been done in various parts of the city to look at that. But it's not something that I have immediate data on now to share. So I've mentioned use inside and outside, and okay, sharing of water from boreholes with your neighbors. At the moment, there's no reason why you cannot, and we would promote that, in fact, that you share it. But you cannot do it if you're going to charge for it. So if you're prepared to share your water free of charge, which I think you're very fortunate if you, particularly people that have natural springs that surface in their properties. And I know of an example a number of them up in the Ranizucht area where people have that fortune of having water coming to the surface in their property. They make it available for other people to come and collect. And as long as they're not charging for it, they're not going to be breaking any regulation. And those are not our regulations, those are the National Department's regulations.
And related to that, there's nothing stopping that guest house owner from purchasing water from other external sources, right?
Absolutely. Now, if that water is, for argument's sake, coming from, and it's a potable water, and he's selling it as such, because he's tapped it from a municipal supply in another town, he cannot charge for it. He could charge for transportation, and that is what is being done. But he has to also apply for a license to do that. Those are not regulations we make. So just to put that on the table. But
all right,
I think in times like this, one would make use of all possible forms of water to mitigate against risks of certain sectors or communities or households running out of water. So.
Yeah. So if somebody is going to charge you for the transportation of water, they can only charge you for that if they've got the necessary paperwork that allows them to charge for transportation of water.
My understanding is that, yeah, if you're going to be providing water out of your property to another one, then you need to actually just register that with the department, that you have a borehole source and that you are going to be not using it, because I think it's category 1 usage of groundwater up to, I think it's 10 kiloliters per day, doesn't require licensing, but as soon as you're going to be commercially active with that water or take it off of your property, then it requires a special license.
All right. So, good sir, who is in Constantia, who has a borehole and would like to make it available to other people, please make sure that you've registered with the necessary departments. No,
Africa?
it's not a conversation. It's just what I'm saying is that the generosity of spirit was most welcome, and it is. But please, let's play within the rules as we do that. So please sit down. Thank you.
Africa, if I can just say one other thing about the boreholes, and I must say that I am actually quite concerned around the boreholes, and I think the message must be responsible use of boreholes. There are thousands and thousands of boreholes going in at the moment. If you've got a borehole existing and you're in the Durbanville area, your borehole has probably dried up already. And remember that in the West Coast, in the Sandveld, lots of boreholes were drilled for agriculture. They sucked out so much of the fresh water out of the aquifer, they turned that aquifer to salt water. If we turn this aquifer to salt, then we kill everything above it.
All right, on the issue of sanitation. Gentlemen, please go and sit down. I'm not taking any more questions.
I know it's not, I just...
No.
I have to insist
Good
that
sir. No, let me tell you my problem. I've got 14 minutes left before we officially adjourn this meeting. I still would like to hear closing statements from these gentlemen, and I've got 2 other people's questions that are already sitting in front of me. I know my name is Africa, but I do deliver things on time. On the issue of sanitation, Peter.
Right. Sanitation is obviously a very important aspect, and once we get to day 0, but even now, what we are saying to folk is, if you have access to alternate water to the potable system, rather than flushing your loos with potable water, use those alternatives. But in any case, we should all be recycling our water and using it in as it degrades in quality, to ultimately using it to flush down the loo. So washing machine water, for argument's sake, you should be collecting to be used for something else, and then ultimately when it's that dirty, you use it down to flush your loo. And this would have to apply, obviously, when one gets to the day 0 scenario, that in communities where there are, and this goes to the question of boreholes, where there is water available, that people make it available for the residents in the vicinity to collect a bucket so that flushing can take place. And if you're fortunate enough to live near the sea, we're also going to say, we'll promote the idea that you take and collect water from the sea for flushing loos. It's not ideal, but in the short term, if it does happen, we get to day 0, for the short period that we would have to be doing that, it won't end up doing too much damage, because there are 2 reasons why it's not a good idea. One is that it can damage the concrete of the actual sewer system, where it goes from the earthenware pipes into the concrete. You get development of very aggressive atmospheric environments in those pipes, which then obviously the concrete starts to suffer. But the other reason is that the treatment processes don't like the saline condition, because the biological process whereby the water is treated don't take kindly to it. However, for short durations and in low concentrations, because we don't expect everybody's going to do that, it's not a problem. So the western seaboard areas, certainly treatment wouldn't be a problem, because there's the outfall systems there. Obviously it goes through an initial pre-process. But there, if you can collect water and substitute it rather than your potable, that will help too. So we are looking at methods to try and sustain as much of the sanitation system as possible, and those ideas are still being refined as we talk at the moment, but that is a very important aspect. Can I go on to the delinquent users and what we're doing about them?
Yes, please.
And I've coined that
related
phrase.
to that, obviously, the question from Simonstown around water management devices that are installed where there are guest houses in operation.
Yeah. All right. So in terms of how do we deal with those offenders that are refusing to conform, we know where you live. And in fact, if you go onto the website, there is that map where you can check your neighbor. Is he a light green dot? Is he is he a dark green dot? And soon there will be red dots. So what we are doing is we're taking the high users that are exceeding the limits that we are setting, and we are progressively putting water management devices onto them, obviously starting with the highest, working down that list. And that we are rolling out at about 2,500 at the moment. We're trying to build that up to 3,500 devices a week. Now that is an immense task, because if you think about the logistics of it. But that's what we're managing to do, and that is having a massive impact as well. And I think people would think twice about now having a device that physically limits you. It releases, let's say, prevents your flexibility on some days to use more than the average amount for the month. So if you have that device, you're going to be limited to so much a day every day. Whereas if you manage it yourself and stay within the monthly amount, you don't have that. So it's a good deterrent as well, but it does mean that we can control those high users down. Even if the guy says, I don't care how much it costs me, I'm going to use as much as I like. We'll come and get you.
All right, before the lady, no, I'll ask the question for you. Don't worry, I'll ask the question for you. Can the owners of bed and breakfasts who know that they have a variable amount of guests, for example, any given day, inform the city of Cape Town that, one, we are bed and breakfast, therefore there will be times when you consume more water than what is the average?
Yeah.
That's the question you want to ask, right? No.
Take into account that it is small businesses that are not commercially zoned. So they will, how do you kind of determine whether they're legal or not, and they're small business, maybe they haven't registered, there's a bit of a grey area there.
All right, cool. Peter?
All right, it's not really grey. I mean, if you're a commercial entity, you should register as such. Then you would have a commercial tariff.
Right, but take the Airbnbs and think a bit further to guest house. Even for a guest house, you're single residential. And I think the reality is, and this is not me and most of the people in this room, but the reality is most of those places have the few rooms in their house. They maybe have a departure or a second dwelling, which will take them over the limit. I just want to know if you will take that into account with the water reducing meters.
Ian?
You see, the key issue is this, that you've got to make a choice whether you are residential or you are commercial. If you are commercial, even if it's an Airbnb, then you must operate on the basis of being commercial, and you must register as a commercial operation. You'll be charged accordingly, but then you will not have to, have the residential restrictions. So you've got to take the choice on that matter.
You don't have a choice.
No.
You don't.
Can you shut down the microphone, please? I'll tell you why. Because we are running out of time, and the point is clear. If you're a business, You register as a business, and therefore the rules apply. If you're not a business, then you're not a business. Simple as that. Okay.
We have to understand that there are a couple of different regulation systems in the city. So first of all, you have your zoning rights. So that's what you're referring to in one case, where we say you don't have to change from being single residential to commercial zoning if you have less than, I think it is 3 rooms.
3 rooms, yeah.
But then there's a second one, and that is in terms of paying property rates. In terms of paying property rates, it doesn't matter what your zoning is for development purposes. It depends on your categorization. Now, largely there's an overlap. In most cases, single residential properties will are charged rates on the basis of residential. But there is a set of rules there as well in terms of categorization for rating purposes that is not exactly the same as that of zoning. So one must understand that there are different processes, and so in the terms of water supply, yes, you can keep your zoning as single residential and have all the rights as far as that's concerned. But the minute you start operating in a commercial way, then you must make the choice. And that may require you to pay rates at a commercial rate, and it might also require you then to pay for your water tariff at a commercial rate. You can't have it both ways.
Enver, this is what I'm going to suggest. Can we get as much detail as possible from the City of Cape Town regarding this particular issue particularly, and get all the information, the bylaws, the clauses, what you must do, what you must not do, communicated to the membership? Thank you very much. Otherwise, we'll just end up taking a lot more time than is necessary. There was one question which I think I'll direct to you, Alan, if that's okay, around how this is a financial crisis for this industry and other industries. When they've been faced with crisis before, government has stepped in to help. Is this something that is even under consideration?
Okay, so it really went to agri, and yes, this province has put in 112 million rand into agriculture. It only goes, and we're only allowed to put it into one area, and that is where animals are dying. And so we work out the carrying capacity on that property, and when there's no water in that area and animals are dying, we put in money for feed, and we've been doing that for 3 years now. But there is no other allowance for bailout, etc. I have broken that rule in one instance where we've actually got emerging farmers, small-scale emerging farmers that we've taken state money to get going, and we have funded the salaries of staff on those farms. You can imagine we've got a big problem in land transformation, and you put a new black farmer onto a piece of land and he gets hit by a drought, can't find the money. We've stepped in to help with subsidizing some of the wages. Those are the only areas that we've subsidized business in a disaster space, and that has not, through the financial crisis, businesses were asked for government subsidy, but we were not able to do any of that. It's only in that one instance in agriculture that we do.
So the simple answer is there is no financial help for this industry. Okay. It is now 3 minutes to 5 o'clock. I was going to ask these gentlemen to give me parting words, but I'm not going to do that. Would you like, okay, Sisa would like a word.
I know I'm sitting next to politicians here, but just...
and Peter would like a final word.
I think just as a parting shot, communication, communication, communication. And I will urge all of you to use the following email address, water@wesgro.co.za. water@wesgro.co.za. Send all your questions in there so that we can compile all these questions and create a frequently asked questions type of template thereafter when the website goes up. Because what informs the website and what's in there is what you ask ultimately. So that's the first step. The second one as well is we are learning from this. Certainly from a SA tourism perspective, we are learning. The last year has been really putting out fires. Well, I shouldn't have said that, but it's really, I think about all the crisis issues that have happened. The first one was the Knysna fires, KZN floods, safety and security issues. We've got to learn as to how we actually systematically respond to these in an orderly fashion so that it becomes predictable, not only to us, but to yourselves as the industry. And that's something that we're actually learning from to make sure that we actually get that done. You know, there's also a very famous saying that, actually by politicians, it's called politics stops at the water's edge. And this is just one of those scenarios where we actually need to work together. Any differences that we have, we can sort out in this room, but the moment we deal with outside, the people that actually feed our businesses, the people that actually drive our business as well, we've got to make sure that we are aligned. We've got to make sure that we are on point in our messaging. And believe in me, from SA Tourism side, we will take that fight. We will take that fight up there. The pact that we have is that we will go and encourage people to come through here, but you do the execution, you do the implementation, you host the people and everything else from that regard. So please, as I say, hold fast, we will get through this, and through constant communication, asking questions, openly exchanging, we'll get through it. I'm really confident around that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Sisanjona, the CEO of SA Tourism. Alan, do you want 30 seconds?
20 seconds. So if Cesar says communication, I want to say innovation. And a quick story, you've got a restaurant in this city, you phoned me the other day, you take 7 months to get a booking in this restaurant, he's in the top 50 in the world, and he said, can you give me clarity, will I have water? And I said, I cannot give you that assurance. He's now opening a business in the middle of this crisis. It's going to be called the Crisis Kitchen, and it's going to use just about no water to produce world-class food. He's innovating and creating a market at the same time. So innovation. That's
amazing. MEC for Economic Opportunities, Alan Windy, thank you very much. Peter.
Just a last word to say we can do this together, but it takes everybody to do it and join hands. And I think the idea of innovation is a great one. Think of innovative ways in the house and in your places of work where you can drive down the demand. But just to say, if any of you folk haven't visited the City of Cape Town's website, please do. We try and post as much information there. The presentation you will find there, plus a far more detailed document giving a lot more information about all the things that are being done and how we project forward. So please make use of that facility. Included there are many tips on household and business adaptation to drive down your demand.
Thank you very much. Peter Flowers, Director of Water and Sanitation with the City of Cape Town. And the final word goes to Alderman Ian Nilsson, Executive Deputy Mayor of the city.
If you save now, you won't have to queue later. Thank you.
In addition to the email address, water@wesgro.co.za, the city's website address, capetown.gov.za, let me also give you the office hours number for that sort of special office that has been put together by Wesgro. It's 021-487-8600. That's 021-487-8600. All of this, though, will be communicated. If I can ask my gentlemen to please stay behind, because some of the media would like to ask you interview you individually on that. And then, Enver, can you just come and close off the proceedings here? Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to say thank you to you guys for taking off, I think, 3 hours out of your busy day to come here and engage with us in terms of these water issues. So thank you for being so interested, and thank you for all the questions you asked, which I think is very pertinent and relevant. And I think what you've done is, with the members of government and the city and so on, you've spoken they got the message from the practitioners themselves, from the floor. So I thank you for being here, and I thank you for attending. I also want to thank the province. Thank you, Minister Wendy. Also want to thank the city. Thank you, Alderman Ian Nielsen. I also want to thank Peter Flower for being here from the city. And thank you, Caesar from South African Tourism, for being here. And we thank you for what you've done thus far and all your efforts that you're putting into alleviating this crisis, and also what you're going to do continuing going forward. So we thank you for that, gentlemen. We also thank you for your time. We know you're very busy at this time of crisis. I also want to say, moving forward from a JAMMS perspective, we will continue to work as an organization, as a joint membership organization, for the benefit of the tourism industry, for the benefit of you guys, and any information that we gather and all the new updates as to what's happening with the water crisis, and any new ideas as to how to alleviate the crisis or alleviate day zero should it arrive, please check your inboxes. We will be sending you updates regularly. And also, if you have any suggestions or ideas or anything that can add to the discussion that you didn't raise here, can you please email us at your various organizations, and we will collate it and send it out to everybody. Thank you. This is the time that we need to work together. Just 1 second, Jeff. The BCP, the Business Continuity Plan, we will be sending that out to you shortly. It's just a template as to give you an idea of what to do, and what a tick box exercise as to see what you need to do should day zero arrive. So thank you very much, and thank you for your participation. I think in the room next door, there will be refreshments available, and I think there's also a cash bar.